I do believe in the sanctity of life. And I think that's why I felt, along with so many other Americans, joy, unfortunately, because it
Joy?
feels like,
Serious?
I mean,
joy at
I
a
guess I would
man's
say
execution?
maybe not joy, but certainly not empathy. Because again,
We're
this is a
watching
man
the footage. How can this make you joyful? This guy's a husband,
Piers,
he's a father,
billions,
and he's being gunned down in the middle of Manhattan. Why does that make you joyful?
Thousands of Americans that he murdered. So are the tens of thousands of Americans, innocent Americans, who died because greedy health insurance executives like this one push policies of denying care to the most vulnerable people. And the many millions of Americans that have watched people that I care about suffer and in some cases die because of lack of health care.
So should they all be killed then? Should they all be killed, these healthcare executives? Would that make you even more joyful?
No, that would not.
Well, why not?
And,
why are you laughing?
I think because it wouldn't fix the system.
You seem to find the whole thing hilarious.
After an overwhelming amount of support for the probable murderer of that United Healthcare CEO, many of the rich and connected with prominent platforms are out to shut it down.
A bloke's been murdered in the street. I don't find it funny at all.
I don't find it funny that tens of thousands of Americans die every year and because they are denied life-saving health care from people like the CEO. Now, I want to fix the system. You're right. We shouldn't be going around shooting each other with vigilante justice. No. I think that it is a good thing that this murder has led to America, or really the media elites and politicians in this country paying attention to this issue for the first time. You mentioned you couldn't understand why somebody would feel this reaction when they watched a CEO die. It's because you have not dealt, it sounds like, with the American healthcare system in the way that millions of other Americans have.
I've dealt with the healthcare system in various ways in America. I don't think it's perfect by any means, but the idea that I would view it as something...
Have you been denied life-saving treatment?
The idea that I would view it as something joyful, that a man who's just a healthcare executive, has been executed in the street, I find completely bizarre.
Piers Morgan finds it completely bizarre that so many people found joy in the murder, but refuses to take in why so many people across the political spectrum did. Because if they fully acknowledge the horrors that this industry has had on so many of its customers, they'd be the ones being shamed for supporting so much intentional death.
The man who murdered the CEO has been caught, but there is a lingering threat that we need to wake up to. Now, on paper, the story here is that this 26-year-old murderer looks like the ideal. Valedictorian, Ivy League, friendly, ambitious, curious, even known to be kind. Please believe me when I tell you the man who did this is not as scary as those celebrating what he did. I told you, there is a new byproduct of magnified minorities on social media and appealing to the fringe on each side of the political spectrum relentlessly. This murderer decided to be a terrorist driven by a new fundamentalism that is taking root right here. Online, just go look for yourselves. There is a growing fan base for a felon. His name isn't just trending. Free him is trending in all caps, and from time to time has more traction than the name itself. Can you believe wanting to openly endorse an assassination? I have never seen a killer celebrated before.
The fact that Louis Mangione isn't what America has deemed the scary murderer type actually adds to the panic that many are experiencing. They're concerned that we won't be able to tell the masses that it was one of those others that pulled off this heinous and cowardly shooting, which usually snaps us back into silence and self-censorship. Chris Cuomo was outraged that there's a growing fan base for a felon, completely missing the obvious fact that we just reelected a 34-time felon to the presidency with a growing fan base after a decade of violent and divisive rhetoric for them. The confusing part is that this murder was done over something nearly every American has suffered through, their lives or their loved ones being tossed aside for profit.
What is going on here is not about left-right, it's about no longer being reasonable about solutions, a rejection of norms and systems that are now seen as the problem, and anything you have to do to make it change is fine. And what is seen as an acceptable remedy is coming home to roost. Look, it's not wrong that people are going off on insurers for a system they believe to be rigged against the rest of us. The pricing, the process. I'm sideways with one right now over a surgery they won't pay for. I've covered the problem for over 20 years, and I'll be honest, little has changed. And while President-elect Trump complains about the ACA, even the great disruptor himself keeps the insurance companies' names out of his mouth when it comes to whom and what to take down. That's how much juice they have. The calm, the comfort that he and they take in the idea that they don't condone the killing. Even the shooter apologized for the pain he caused, but they all agree that it was necessary. You know who else says that? Islamists and every other group of terrorists that think violence is okay.
Cuomo took about 30 seconds out of his lengthy monologue to acknowledge where the pain and anger comes from, even claiming that he's going through a frustrating healthcare process himself. But no one really believes that he'll die over the dispute that he's experiencing. The attempt to see where the anger and dismissive reactions are coming from falls flat because he's not making $45,000 a year and staring at death over an industry's policy of profiting off of its customers' slow and painful demise. We don't like to put it in those terms because it just might cause too many people to stop accepting it in ways much less violent than what Mangione did. But even that is too much.
You know what's annoying me about this kid who killed this CEO is none of these news programs are talking about the incredible lack of empathy from the general public about this because of how these insurance companies treat people when they are at their most vulnerable, after we've all given them our money every month and now we finally need you and all you do is deny us. And then these and all of these things are taking the pictures of their CEOs off their websites. You know, I got to be honest with you, okay? I love that CEOs are afraid right now. You should be. By and large, you're all a bunch of selfish, greedy pieces of shit, and a lot of you are mass murderers. You just don't pull the trigger. That's why it looks clean. That's why these people look, oh my God, oh, he was just, you know, walking into a hotel. It's like, okay, but what was his job? What did he do? What was the results of it?
It's always been really easy to simply pass this level of anger and forced suffering off as a left or right issue so that the mass number of people that are victims of our predatory capitalistic society won't have a common belief system that forces them to challenge our age-old ways of sustaining the lives of the wealthy off of the backs of regular Americans. We've convinced struggling families that if we just sacrifice their money, their education, their housing, their jobs to the richest and the faceless industries like the health insurance for an undetermined amount of time, they'll soon have the heart to reinvest our money into our lives. The smart ones realize that the best way to prosperity is by joining the predatory systems rather than patiently being exploited by them.
We live in a really, really perverse and dangerous and awful place when people are willing to say the things that people are saying online. And then for this person at the Washington, I don't know which, the Taylor Lorenz, celebrating CEOs, because what kind of society do we live in? I can understand you disagreeing with a company's policies, but that doesn't mean that you have the right, that anyone has the right to go and kill somebody. Now, this young guy right here, if indeed he's the person, and they prosecute him, I hope he gets a death penalty. I hope he's prosecuted to the fullest extent.
We don't have the death penalty in New York.
Well, maybe you can get him to get in there. You and Trump can figure something out.
Now, think about what Harold Ford Jr. is saying here. He wants to utilize the death penalty to punish this murderer to the fullest extent so that it'll work as we usually think it does, to deter others from doing the same. But if you think about it, many people that he's disgusted by for celebrating his actions are already facing death or have watched someone they love die a more painful death than most executions allow. When our capitalistic society erases the humanity of its victims and ushers them to death's door for simply getting unlucky with the state of their health, why would they be afraid of capital punishment? So it's looking like those that are afraid of a society that's fed up with being exploited for the uber wealthy to become the uber wealthy are facing a natural outcome for a system that they've celebrated for generations. And I don't think shaming or attempting to criticize their reactions to this murder will work this time, especially since they laugh at the deaths of citizens in the streets, ignore the ever-increasing murder of our kids in schools, and profit off of the pain and suffering that many Americans bankrupt themselves for.
The last thing I would say is, I hope the only one person I know in this set who has low back pains is Jesse. I hope he is not pushed to make any efforts like this. Make a gun
I
or
was
anything like that.
homicidal after my emergency back surgery. No, you're right. I wanted to kill Johnny, though. Right. Because he assembled my chair, which put me into this surgery. I was so wrong about this case. Last week, they came on. I said, this guy's a pro. Total
Yeah, I
professional,
know,
just by the way he acted.
Yeah.
Right.
And then it turns out he was so horny, he took his mask off to flirt with a barista. And he keeps the murder weapon on him. And then he has a manifesto. It's almost like he wanted to get caught. This guy's not ready. He's way too soft. He's going to get annihilated on the inside, and good. If he's not going to get the death penalty, maybe someone will do him justice behind bars. That's all I have to say about that.
You should stop there.
We'll see if we find more about Luigi.
God, those Italians, Brian,
I know.
unbelievable.
You hurt my people. That's unbelievable. Like the mob thing isn't hard enough to shake. Now we got a murderer 6 blocks away.